So I just got to work, and on my way to work, I listened to different audiobooks, and I just finished an audiobook called The Blue Ocean Theory by W. Chan Kim. And I want to make little videos like this to help me review and keep that information fresh. So really enjoy this book. There are about five major lessons I took away from it, five different revelations, thoughts, challenges that I thought were really valuable. So I want to highlight those right now. The first is that when looking at different businesses and organizations, they make the argument that instead of trying to compare companies and saying that companies are indefinitely good or bad, that instead the unit of measure should be the strategic decisions they make. This is in part because when the authors were doing their analysis, they saw that in books like Built to Last and Good to Great, many of those same companies ended up in later books like How the Mighty Fall by Jim Collins. Perhaps trying to decipher what makes a business great is the wrong approach. I thought that was a really interesting perspective to take. So they want to focus on strategies. When your strategy, so that's point number one. Point number two, that when your strategy is focused on growth, that instead of trying to compete on quality or service or cost, that instead the a better approach might be trying to separate yourself from your competition, what they call creating a blue ocean, creating a new opportunity, broadening the market in an area that hadn't been previously addressed. Now, this sounds great, but what does that actually mean? What they are saying is that you're creating something that takes the best away from some of the other alternatives outside of your market that people seek out when people are not buying your product or using the products in your market, and trying to incorporate those into an offering that you are interested in offering. That way you can have a even larger market than the market that you and your competitors are currently serving, but you are divergent from all your competitors because you're offering something so valuable that it's what people even outside of your market are looking for, but it's also focused. You're cutting out some of the stuff you aren't going to need, things that add extra cost, things that may have been entrenched in your market and may be considered standards that actually don't add any additional value to customers. So one of the examples they have to kind of tidy up that idea is looking at companies like Curves or Southwest, or even the Ford with the Model T. So if we use the idea of Curves, that company said, okay, we're not going to compete with the $100 a month fitness clubs. What instead we want is the larger group of people who don't like going to fitness clubs and instead work out at home. The benefit of a fitness club is that you're there with the community and you are being held accountable. But the downsides are that it costs so much, you have to go to a busy city center, everyone's looking at you, you feel like you're being judged. The benefits of working out at home, that you aren't getting all of those potentially you're missing out on being judged and watched and viewed, but when you're working out at home you could just as easily choose not to work out. So Curve said, let's cut out the expense, the need to travel to busy city centers, make it women focused so people don't feel like you're being gawked at, and but take the best of the fitness center offering, which is being with other peers, feeling encouraged, having a community. And then in the early 2000s, that idea blossomed because it hit a need that the market was looking for, that the total community was looking for. It was focused on the commonalities between two separate market segments, but it took out all the extra crap that just wasn't needed. So I thought that was a really interesting way to create what they call a blue ocean, a new market opportunity that focuses on the commonalities of larger outside markets while cutting away the stuff you don't need. Ultimately, the way that they summarize that is be divergent but focused, and make sure you have a clear tagline. The third major lesson I took away from this book was that it's important to have a visual tool. So in trying to map out the ways that current competitors offer on certain parts of your market, and a group of domains that allow you and encourage you to look outside of your market, what they call the 6 domains. It can get kind of confusing trying to tie all those things up in your head. So instead of just trying to remember it, they suggest drawing something out called a strategy map. When you're out talking to potential clients or potential customers, they suggest using a tool called the utility tool, so that you can actually graph out and chart out when and how you feel you're adding value to different parts of the purchase cycle. You know, the purchasing of it, the use of it, the maintenance of it, the disposal of it, to see if you actually are offering something that's clearly different from what's currently available. So that third important point was making sure you have a visual tool that kind of ties it all together, so you can see it easily, so your staff can see it easily, so the market and your customers can understand it more easily. The fourth major point that they made in this book was that you then have to get out and share these ideas. You have to be better at communicating with your, as a leadership team, you have to communicate with your staff, with the people on the ground floor who are actually implementing these strategies. You need to go out and talk to the customers, the users. After you come up with ideas and create these interesting strategy maps, you have to create a way to almost creating what they called a strategy fair, so that people who could be users, customers, vendors, your staff members can look at it and say, no, that's not valuable. No, I see how that's different, but that's not valuable. No, I do see how that's different, and that is valuable, so that you can actually move forward with a strategy that's better than what you would have come up with on your own. So that sharing and communicating is really key. And you hear that a lot in different books, like Patrick Lencioni's The Advantage. The quarter of that book is about how to better communicate. Gino Wickman's Traction is similar. So communication is key, and you have to get out of your office to do that communicating, not outsourcing it to a third party. And then the fifth point in this book that I thought was really important is then they say you have to implement it in a way that doesn't sink the ship, because the things you're currently doing that are caught up in the current or the understandable business world of competition, where you're competing with your market, you're trying to outprice them, you're trying to provide better quality. Those things are, even though they may make for marginal growth, that's what's actually bringing the money in today to keep the lights on. So you have to make sure that you implement this new, divergent, exciting venture in a way that doesn't kill what you're currently doing. And I think this book does lack in good, or at least complete strategies on how to do that. So if once you get to that part of the book, I think it's important to look at other texts like Lean Startup by Eric Ries, or 4 Disciplines of Execution by the Covey Group, Measure What Matters, the book on how Google and other IT groups or technology companies strategize how they execute on things. Even books like Jim Collins' How the Mighty Fall talks about how to reach for something new but not sink your ship while you're doing it. So a great idea that they brought up, but other books may help fill in the gaps. One other thing that I thought about this book that could be better is that it's ultimately, in scientific terms, what we call level of evidence 4. It's really just a retrospective case series. I didn't really see direct comparisons like Jim Collins often does, which are called case control studies. And of course, there wasn't really anything prospective moving forward here. So we have to make sure that we don't just take this book as being the gospel truth. It's the observations of some smart people, but they are observations. So that's what I took away from it. This book, again, Blue Ocean Theory by W. Chan Kim. I really enjoyed it. Some thought-provoking ideas on how to clearly define who you are and move forward with a strategy effectively. All right, bye. Back to work.